Any liberal society is governed by way of a constitution by which everyone must abide. Uganda has not only had one constitution, but four. However, behind these constitutions are sad stories. Half of the 9 regimes Uganda has ever had have kicked far from near the existing constitutions in favor of new ones, and in the worst scenarios, ruled by decree.
All in the heart.
The road to constitutionalism in an independent Uganda started in September 1961. 48 national representatives participated in the Constitutional Conference at Lancaster House in London to frame the first constitution. Uganda dropped the hardline push for its independence from the rest of Uganda at the conference.
Lord Master, he concluded that it was not good for Uganda to claim its independence solely. It was necessary for a federal system of government to come in to enable Uganda to retain its autonomy while working with the rest of the regions.
The first constitution of Uganda was promulgated on 8 October 1962.
To hand to you, Mr. Prime Minister, as the representative of the peoples of Uganda, the constitutional instruments embodying the independence of Uganda.
There is a school of thought that the holding of the conference thousands of kilometers far from here was a false start that they hold responsible for the catastrophic political turmoil that followed. The criticism is founded on the fact that it inhibited mass participation.
The 1962 Constitution was a colonial document giving us independence. Yes. Our views, people's views were not.
Those with a different line of thinking argue that holding the conference within Uganda during the period would end up with a similar outcome.
The levels of literacy in Uganda and the ability for communities to come together was not yet properly coalesced.
The 1962 Sovereign State Constitution co-opted elements of the British system with the monarchy as the head of state. At first, Queen Elizabeth was maintained as the head of state, represented locally by a governor, and the Prime Minister, the head of government. Uganda was accorded a special status by the Constitution with powers to indirectly choose 21 of its representatives to Parliament through the Luchiko. This is unlike Bunyoro, Toro, Ankole, and the unitary districts. It also suggested holding a referendum to settle the question of the two lost Bunyoro counties of Buyaga and Bugangaizi, which were previously handed over to Uganda by the British.
It became a very big issue to an extent that in 1964 people died because of the so-called lost counties. People who hated kingdoms went here and destroyed the Buganda kingdom.
The 1962 Constitution was amended for the first time in 1963. The amendment abolished the British monarchy as the head of state and introduced the presidency. The changes saw the Kabaka of Uganda, Sir Edward Mutesa Walugembe Lwangula II, become the first president of Uganda. Both Obote and Mutesa had forged an alliance between their political vehicles, which were the Uganda People's Congress and the Kabaka Yeka. UPC and KY edged out the Benedicto Chwanuka-led Democratic Party in 1962 elections. But 4 years later, what came to be known as marriage of convenience between Obote and Mutesa developed cracks. The situation ended with an attack on Mutesa's palace in Mengo in 1966, fueled by concerns about the rejection of Uganda's autonomy and the referendum over the two lost counties. The call for investigations and action against the plunders of gold in the Democratic Republic of Congo was the final straw that broke the camel's back, leading to Mutesa's exile to London on 24 February 1966. Obote assumed the presidency a month later and abrogated the constitution, only to replace it with the Pigeonhole Constitution, which Parliament passed without debate. The Pigeonhole Constitution became the second constitution.
That was really our lowest. That you have members of Parliament, elected leaders, approve of a document they have not seen, leave alone reading.
In September 1967, barely a year after the enactment of the Pigeonhole Constitution, the Constituent Assembly enacted the Republican Constitution. This was the third constitution that officially switched from the element of monarchism contained in the 1962 Constitution.
Since 1966, this country has never had any meaningful peace. That is why we are still in chaos.
The overthrow of Obote by Amin in 1971 was accompanied by the suspension of the Constitution through the legal notice number 1. Amin ruled by decree for 8 years, and the 1967 constitution was only restored in 1980 following Obote's return. The subsequent short-lived governments that came to power after the overthrow of Obote suspended parts of the constitution, a situation that prevailed after the National Resistance Army captured power in 1986. It was not until 1995 that the fourth constitution was promulgated.
So the Bushmen then tell us that, for us to be at peace and stop these continual wars, we needed an agreement by the people of Uganda. How do we want to govern ourselves?
Observers believe some of the crisis experiences would have been avoided had the writing of the first constitution taken a different course, but others find it a lame excuse to blame the past.
America was also built up by British colonialists. They found Indians, they found diverse people, they fought a civil war. They're a big democracy.
They argue that whatever the state of affairs, the country should have picked itself up and moved on.
You can't keep stealing public funds, you can't keep looting, you can't keep torturing people for 40 years and blame it on the Lancaster Conference. How do you explain that now the Lancaster Conference is the one which makes me give to Gume public funds without an agreement? That is the Lancaster Conference which makes me create a court martial to torture people.
In the second part of the 1995 Constitution at 30, we focus on how a convergence of opinions was arrived at, the faces behind the Constitution, and the processes leading to the drawing of the Constitution. Jackson Onyango, NTV.